Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever edition of the Blockchain Talks webinar series by Bware Labs. In this series of videos, we will try to have some casual conversations about some very serious topics related to the blockchain technology, blockchain security, and a lot others. Here with me today, I have two blockchain experts in both smart contract development and smart contract security, and we will approach exactly this topic, the topic of blockchain smart contract security. But first, let's start with some presentation. My name is Radu Enoiu. I am one of the co-founders of Bware Labs, and I'm going to try and moderate this series for you. And here with me today, I have Marius and Alex, and I'm going to let them say a couple of words about themselves, about their experience, and what makes them good go-to person when discussing about blockchain security, smart contracts, and development. So, Marius, would you like to start? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience, and anything that you consider interesting related to blockchain technology.
Yeah, I'm Marius. I'm in tech for over a decade now, and I've been starting as a web. Actually, I started firstly building websites, and then trying to break them, and afterwards I moved to more serious stuff, and joined Sofbinator, uh, and did a lot of like web to startups, big applications, big data, the decentralized, actually not decentralized, most like distributed systems. And around 5 years ago, I think I slowly moved to blockchain because I found it interesting, and because I was a distributed guy, I liked it to go into the decentralized world of distributed systems, and yeah, joined this let's say this culture because that's how I describe it right now, and started to do a little bit of like blockchain work. At first, the let's say the environment wasn't like so developer friendly. It was more like some geeks that doing some weird cryptographic stuff. And 2020, I was a big part of like DeFi revolution and DeFi summer, and did a lot of like investing, degening, and I started to look into the code and into the code of the protocol that I was trying to degen into. And that's how I kind of like started into the security, because I didn't want to put my money where in a scam, even though I had some scams. I fell for some scams during this time, but slowly learned how not to do it, and how to actually see scams and exploits and so on and so forth. And that's how kind of like when I started to get more and more into the security and doing more security work, and also smart contract development, and kind of like everything blockchain nowadays. So kind of like that's my background.
Okay, so it was not a traditional roadmap for you, let's say. You started directly by investing, and because it was interesting and it was a necessity, because the investment side required you to actually check for security, and that turned out into an actual job at some point.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. Spending a lot of time now throughout with Sofbinator, and also on my own, and researching and so on and so forth.
yeah, sounds very nice. Let's hear from Alex. Alex, what can you tell us about yourself?
Hello everyone, my name is Alex. I don't have such an interesting story such as Marius about my involvement into the Web3 space. Basically, my former experience before joining the blockchain industry was around the networking, like routing protocols. So currently, I'm a smart contract developer for Bware Labs. I have an experience starting 2020 in the Web3 space that includes blockchain infrastructure for RPCs, as well as indexing solutions, and it goes up to smart contract and protocols such as staking protocols, DeFi, and also like the security part, which is around developing smart contracts and also putting your money into others, as Marius pointed out previously. So with Bware Labs, I'm also involved in the off-chain protocol, which is mostly networking, basically routing, because we have like a RPC provider. You have to ensure like latency, throughput, and performance for the clients. So it goes hand in hand with what I've done previously.
Oh, that's very handy for us at Bware Labs. Now,
yeah, I guess so.
yeah. Now I'd like to go back to Marius because he said a very interesting thing in his description that he started looking into smart contract and smart contract security from a need of researching projects that you are investing in. So basically, when you do a research on a new project building on blockchain, like a DeFi platform or whatsoever, because most of us usually look at things such as what is the core team behind the project, who are the backers, the venture investors, what community they have, what type of partnerships, and we try to basically make some sense of the actual idea of the project. And I'm curious, what other things do you care about strictly from a security standpoint when you are researching a project?
Well, so my methodology of actually researching a project got very interesting and evolved over time. So things that I'm looking right now is mostly so here are so like alphas. I usually go into the deployer address and look what other things they deployed, because now it doesn't happen that often because the tooling became like very evolved. But previously, and I still get some of those hints. You could look at that deployer address and do a bit of tracing and see what other things they deployed or not, because it's important. Because some of them, especially if it's a scam, and if it's not a good scammer, it's usually using the same address or like sending money from other addresses that were involved in scams, and it's easily to actually look them across the chains. And another important thing is actually to look on testnets, because most of these developers are actually deploying on testnet first, doing some stuff there, and afterwards, of course, they deploy on mainnet. So I do a bit of tracing on that part, and I look exactly okay what they built and if they build or not. Sometimes I actually find some good stuff, like they actually build another protocol that is successful and so on and so forth. So I know that okay, this team has also experience previously on other projects that seems they are doing good or not necessarily that they are not doing good, because maybe there is a time like okay, we try something, we work for a year, but now it's not working, because a year in blockchain is like a lot. So I do that as well, and I find sometimes good things, but most of the time I find bad things if I find something. Another thing that I do usually is actually looking at the website and do a bit of Web2 security there. Like I'm looking at what types of certificates they are using for their website, when they register the domain, if I see some information about that domain, because that also tells you about if it's a legit team or not. Because sometimes, like for example, if I see a Let's Encrypt certificate, that's kind of like gives me a red flag, because they didn't actually have. At least they should use like Cloudflare or like any other like reputable DNS provider, and they can have like a real certificate. So these are things that gives me some red flags or not. Other than that, I'm trying to look into the Discord and see what's the community there, and if like if it's for bots or not, and what types of like how aggressive they are on the Discord, because most of the time the scammers are very aggressive in the Discord, like hey we have 24 hours to do this, don't forget it's 23 hours and 30 minutes, and because they are trying to attract more people into their scam. So that's another like thing that I'm looking at, because it's very important to see how aggressive the team is, right? And after that, probably a bit of Twitter as well. I'm trying to search things about the project and on what website they are listed, or if not or not. Of course, I look at the TVL and how that TVL actually progressed. If it's like a big well that has like 50% of the supply and the others are like just a few guys that entered, because you don't want to be an exit liquidity for others. So you try to see and try to like narrow down that possibility of being an exit liquidity for others. So yeah, that's kind of like non-standard things that I do usually. Because of course there are, as you said, also the standard ones. You look at the team, you look at the contract. Actually, I look at the contract. I try to audit a bit, but if it's like a big protocol and has a lot of stuff, I look at the audits and look who did the audits, what findings they did. Because most of the time during the an audit process, like if the project if the devs behind the project know what they do, you will see that within the audit report. But I don't think that like 100% like like a badge of if they are skilled or not, because sometimes you actually introduce bugs without actually knowing. But if it's like the bugs that obvious bugs that they actually didn't test the contracts before audit and so on and so forth, those are like red flags for me. uh, because it means that either the devs is not so skilled, if either the devs were like hired outside and the protocol owner didn't actually pay a lot of attention on those devs. So all of those, because we had in the past like devs ragging, right? Someone hired an external team, and the external team was actually a dev on Upwork, and after and he let a backdoor into the smart contracts. Of course, if you are like a protocol owner and you don't know how to code, you trust the dev, and you don't know how to look for this stuff. And yeah, it's kind of like that. That's what I'm looking at. Also, I'm looking at the ownerships, addresses, who owns those contracts, because most of the time also the owner can run the project either by mistake, either by not. And it's also good if that's a multi-sig or not behind those ownerships. If it's not a multi-sig, it's a bit of red flag as well, because another big security within our field is that those keys get compromised very easily. And because it's compromised, because they get compromised, you can lose your funds without actually the team actually doing the rug pull. I think that's enough from what how I look at the project.
It's quite a big list. It's a good thing that we have this recorded, because otherwise I'd be sorry that I didn't have my notebook to note some of that down. Really like the idea about searching the deployment address and see if it has a history. It never occurred to me to do that, and also to look in the audit report to check if there are like obvious mistakes, which gives you a very good idea about the actual quality of the project.
Yeah.
Because yeah, as you
This
said, if it's
this mistake doesn't actually. I mean, people are usually harsh with the dev when they say, "Ah, they had 10 highs." Well, that doesn't mean that they are a bad team or stuff like that. It usually means that okay, maybe we didn't have time to test all the edge cases, and we didn't know, we are not skilled enough to actually find all of this. That's why we didn't audit, and that's good. But if you see things like, yeah, this smart contract can never work because they didn't test actually if it can be initialized, for example, right? Well, that means that the devs actually didn't put a lot of thought into it. So that's a red flag.
very nice. Thank you for that. Very useful information. I think everyone will have a second look now. At least the people that possess some technical skills. Alex, do you want to add something from a development point of view to what you are paying close attention to when you are researching a project or uh, looking into?
Usually, yeah, usually from a technical perspective, I'm looking at the project and check up on what they're trying to solve in the Web3 space. And if it's something big, which is something like I've thought about before and couldn't conclude on some easy to implement or sustain solution, then I will definitely have a look at that project. In terms of security, as Marius said, I'm trying to find all the contracts that communicate with each other and complete the protocol, the on-chain part of it, and spend some time on the code itself, see if it meets the specification defined publicly to their users, and unless something really strange happens in there, like a backdoor or some issue that the team may never know about, then yeah, that's a red flag from me. The second part will be like, who owns the protocol? Basically, not everything can be implemented as a DAO because it's quite hard to do that on chain. So a lot of ownership in the Web3 protocols is designed to be on a multi-sig, as Marius said, or even worse, on a private externally owned address. Like these ones can be easily manipulated, or the team can just rug pull their own project. So basically, this is the part where you should move to social media, document about the team members, their past experience in the space, or in general, like look up their LinkedIn profiles, stuff like that, which is like KYC the team itself in order to ensure they are legit and they don't want to rug pull their own project. So that will be the last part. When the technical verification fails, you have to do it manually and base your assumptions on social media platforms to find out about the legitimacy of the project.
That makes total sense, actually, yeah. So now moving into a more professional area, I have a question for Marius. Whenever you actually do an audit for a smart contract or for a company, is there an initial set of checks that you have that you go through first before looking in depth, or maybe something that could maybe be available to the less technical audience? Do you have something like that, or you just verify case by case?
Well, usually when I do that, I mean, I first jump into the tests because that's very important. Like I mean, right now it's like a very big debate on testing and how you actually can test and how many tests you should have before actually going to audit and so on and so forth. So I usually look to see how much tests they have and what coverage they have. But I'm more interested into like the edge casing part of that, not necessarily unit testing, because it's easy to actually do unit testing and cover all the branches and say that yeah we are 100% coverage, but edge case testing is a big thing, and I'm talking here about projects that are like big and that actually they do something, not like a small smart contract that does one or two things, right? When you have like a big smart contract architecture and there may be a lot of like edge case testing, and those needs to be tested like very good. If they have fuzzing, like fuzz tests, invariants, and all types of like testing, that's very important from my point of view. Because if you look at a smart contract, it's not like a very big piece of code, right? If you compare that with like Web 2 and where Web 2 you have millions and millions of lines of code, in Web 3 the lines of code are like they're not that big, right? So you can like actually say, yeah, this is a very, I mean, if you read it, you cannot read it line by line because that it will take you months. But what's important is like those edge case testing, because once that contract is deployed or not, I mean, once that contract is deployed, that's quite a big problem if you have a big issue, because first it's public, secondly it may not be easy to redeploy and move liquidity or move assets. and that's one thing that I'm looking at. Another thing that I'm looking at is not actually the code, is the documentation, and see how accurate it is. Because most of the time, when the owner talks with the devs, if the owner is not a bit technical, he tries to express something with his own words in like in natural language, and the dev must understand that and implement it into the code. And there are two things here. Firstly, either the dev didn't actually understand what the owner said, right, and he did not implement it correctly, or the dev implemented actually something different because he thought that maybe that's easier than what the owner said, and the owner has some expectations. This can do this, but actually the smart contract doesn't do that, and that's a problem. And that's what I'm trying to look like. Business point of view, if it makes sense, and if it makes sense, okay. Then, of course, if you analyze the business point of view, you also analyze the, let's say the previous implementations on what that protocol does. Because most of these protocols actually 60-70% they actually alike, and some of them have like a new thing that adds on top of that. But that 60-70% is important also to see how others they did it, and if they did it correctly, and if they understood how to implement it. So I also do a bit of reverse engineering on the business side. And of course, then I'm going to the code and I'm trying to look there and see if there are like bugs, logic bugs, or like known bugs, and they are still present. Because most of these protocols, some of them are like forks from other protocols. So it's like in Web3 we have this big concept of forking, which basically copy paste the code from another protocol and implement it into your protocol, and you add something on top. And maybe here again there are a lot of use cases, like the owner doesn't actually know how that protocol works, and he just uses it like he thinks he knows, or like the other protocol functions in a way, and you can exploit it in a particular way, and the owner or the dev didn't know that. So that's what I'm trying to actually look, and so on and so forth. Besides the obvious like checks, like okay, reentrancy and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So, coming back to some of the things that you said initially about the testing, I was curious what's a good coverage, what you consider a good coverage of a smart contract when you think about edge testing and also unit testing.
Well, I mean, of course, having 100% of coverage is very good, because actually you went through all the branches and you tested that, okay, if it's on this branch, it actually works and not reverts. But so that's good. If you can manage to do it, then that's good. But anyhow, everything over 85-90% is actually also good. It depends on the size of the architecture as well. Because if it's like 1-2 smart contracts, 100% is pretty easy to get to. But if you have like 20 contracts, 100% on all the files, well, it will take a lot of time to actually do that, right? So some of these, let's say, edge cases, maybe you don't actually check. Like for example, setters and getters, you don't check all of them, because it's, I mean, if you look at the code, it's pretty obvious that setter is setting that, or that getter is actually getting that, right? And you don't actually need to write a test. But on the edge case testing is like, it's a very gray area how much edge case testing you should do.
That all actually makes a lot of sense, but coming back to what you were initially saying about looking at unit tests and test coverage, I'm curious, what would you say it is a good coverage when you look into a smart contract?
Yeah, so it's actually pretty hard to do 100% coverage, right? If you have like 1 or 2 smart contracts, that's easy, because well, it's not much work. But if you have like 20 contracts or more, Reaching 100%, you need a lot of time to do that. You need like a lot of time and a lot of like dev power. And most of the protocols don't have that much time because time usually means money. But also they try to coverage all the branches that are important. For example, setters and getters may not need it, may not need it to be like 100% covered, because you can look in the code and you can see that the setter actually sets something and the getter gets something. So it's not like a big issue if you don't write a test for that. It's good, but if you don't have the time, that's usually where people like cut the corners, right? But the edge case testing is very important. That's actually a very gray area because there are many edge cases, right? But there are some patterns that you can follow. For example, in DeFi, edge case testing usually means working with very large numbers and actually expecting the outputs to be very high numbers or inputs to be very high numbers. For example, previously before like Uniswap had Uniswap and other protocols like Avi and so on and so forth released that term of flash loan, where you can actually have like, let's say, not unlimited but a very big amount of assets within the same transaction. No one actually talked that this doesn't talk if you have 100 let's say 1000 ether, because no one actually has 1000 ether, right? So most of the protocols were like but no one actually has that much amount of assets. But after this concept of like flash loan, or if they had actually to have a very big budget to exploit, and that's one. And second, they had actually to put that into play, and that's not a good thing. But when you have a flash loan, for example, you can actually have very big amount of assets to work with within the same transaction. So you can actually do some simulation, and if the transaction fails, you actually don't lose those money. But if the transaction fails, and those are your own money, and you put them like into the exploit, that can be I mean, not a lot of exploiters do that. So that's one of the edge case testing within the DeFi, right? And there are of course other types of edge case testing, reorgs for I don't know, maybe if like a multi-chain app reorgs or a bridge, depends on what type of bridging. So there are all of these edge case testing that it's particular per project, and you should test them. And as many as you can think of, you should actually test. And fuzzing is a good tooling to actually help you test this edge casing, because fuzzing is basically just throwing inputs, and expect some valid outputs. And with fuzzing, it's a good tool to actually test a lot of this edge case testing.
Thank you. That's very descriptive. It makes a lot more sense now. And now I'm going to Alex, who already has a lot of experience writing smart contracts, and I know for sure that he underwent a couple of security audits. Was curious if any of those audits uncovered important vulnerability in any of your code, or how did it go? How important did you feel it is to have the smart contract audited before releasing?
Well, Radu, so far there were some minor and medium vulnerabilities that were discovered in the code itself. Things like Marius explained before, like working with big numbers and dealing with the imprecision, truncation errors, this kind of stuff, which can add up and may produce some unexpected behavior in the end. The overall, I would state the obvious, like smart contract audits are of utmost importance, because basically you have another team which is unbiased and with experience to look over your code. So basically, usually you get a specification for a smart contract from the product team, right? The owner wants the contract to do that and obey the specification. The developers will try and decide upon the architecture, data structures, and so on and so forth. But they are communicating constantly with each other. So basically, there are some assumptions, and it happened in my case as well, when all of us decided on some solution or approach to a specific part of the contract. So basically, we convinced each other to adopt that strategy, and there was no arguments, no criticism around that vision. So basically, it's good to have another team which doesn't have any knowledge of your protocol or of you. They don't know you or your expertise in general, so they can be fully objective on how the contract looks, how it behaves, and if it obeys the specification that is documented so far. So the process is also iterative. So basically, they found some vulnerabilities of some class. It could be low or major bugs in your code. You fix them, you reiterate the process with the audit company, and doing so, you end up understanding your own protocol better because you have to explain it to people that don't know anything about it. So yeah, it's a good tool for understanding your own protocol and what has been working wrong in your thinking process. That would be the major advantage. Not only to have more smart people looking over your code, but also getting an objective opinion on it.
Yeah, that practically makes total sense. Basically, having someone that is non-biased doesn't actually know the design discussions and has a look from outside is always useful. And if the persons are also smart, that's for the better. So now we're gonna move to another section of the discussion. I wanted to ask Marius about a couple of his experiences last year, because I know you were part of a white hacker group that saved quite a lot of funds during some of the hacks that happened last year on a couple of bridges. Can you tell us a little bit more about those experiences? I'm curious, how do you usually find out so quickly about a hack happening, and how did you decide actually to come together and help those impacted teams? Because there was quite some help that you gave, at least for some of the teams that we actually personally know. So just tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
So I've been uh, a white hacker, if you can call it like that, for all my life. Right? I like to test things out, and I remember also in Web 2, I was like looking at websites, trying to see what's wrong and what's not wrong, and reporting to the teams and so on and so forth. But when I joined the Web3 space, I started to get more and more into it. And also back in 2020, I did a lot of at that time I wasn't calling it like white hacking. I was just calling it I'm helping these people to not get wrecked because this is a vulnerability and they don't know, and I report to them, and sometimes I got no, we don't trust you, or sometimes they are like, thank you very much for helping us. Sometimes they actually don't respond to those. So especially last year, I spent a bit more time on it. And how did I mean, I usually stay a lot on Twitter and actually see things happening real time, because usually someone posts on Twitter that this transaction doesn't look good. And I also have some Telegram groups that I'm part of, and those are reported privately between us, and we start looking into it. And there are some cool people within our space that actually want to do good, and we keep helping each other. Sometimes it needs more eyes into something to see what's wrong and what's not wrong, and sometimes it also, because blockchain is 24/7, sometimes you may be asleep when a hack happens, right? So having people all around the globe, all time zones, it helps. And I got lucky. Some of the lucky, if you can call it like that, some of the hacks were happening when I was awake, and I could actually act and try to save those funds, because it's the most important thing for me to have like an ethical part of my job, and why I'm here is to actually try to to not have people suffer from using this technology, because it happened a lot and it's still happening, and those are like real assets, like real money, and can be very impactful for some of these people that are investing. Even though everyone says that don't invest more than you can lose, do more research, but we know that behind most of the time behind those assets are like real people that are actually trying to make some money, and it's good when they lose a lot of money, or they lose money that they actually they worked for. And yeah, it's actually part of my as I said, my work ethic, and I'm trying to help them as much as I can. And whenever like a hack happens and I'm like awake and I have a bit of free time, I actually look into and try to at least trace the funds, see where they went, trying to see what, because most of the time it actually takes some time until you can discover what's the bug or what was the bug. And if you get lucky and you actually see right away, you can actually act and maybe save some funds. Or if not, at least you can actually report and tell to the community or to the dev team why this happened and how this was possible. So yeah, we kind of like are a group of people that communicate, and we know each other within our, let's say, Twitter handle, not personally. With some of them I also know personally, and we try to work this, because all of us want this, let's say, to succeed, and to be a space where people can actually invest their own money or actually do some good on the blockchain. So that's why I'm doing it, and how I'm doing it as well.
That's very nice of you, and I think this is one of the best things about, at least the things that I like most about Web3, because it's like you said in the beginning, it resembles more to a culture rather than an industry, and you always get people, you see people getting involved even if there's now no financial gains out of it. So that's I think the most, this type of collaboration is the most interesting part of the Web3 industry, if you ask me. And with this question, we're going into the more philosophical side of the conversation, let's say. It ties perfectly into what you just said before about people actually losing their savings or real assets. And I want to ask both of you if you feel that at the moment the security in Web3 is mature enough so that we can onboard the larger public, the ones that are not blockchain enthusiasts and don't know much about Web3, but would benefit from some of the products that are being developed in this space.
Well, I think as far as like protocols are public and there is no way to hook up on the function of the protocol from the external world, so you just execute that smart contract and that's it. There will be always a issue in terms of security, because you adhere to some rules stipulated by other people. So those rules being written like in a formal language that the majority of people don't know because they are not like developers, it's really hard for them to get included in that protocol. Its function can be explained to the outside people, but they're not 100% secure unless there are other mechanisms put in place. And by that I mean there should be, and I guess it will happen real soon, like blockchain protocols and platforms that will develop social recovery schemes, like some as well as identity, real identity linked up to your resources. Unless you get some ownership that's decided at the base layer of the platform, you may decide to participate to any protocol, but if the layer, like the blockchain itself, can attest that you own a resource, a specific resource, then no protocol can temporarily hold the resource, steal it, move your funds anywhere else. And I think there should be more primitives to be designed, which are on the baseline layer, on which smart contracts can be built upon. Because smart contracts already give you some proof of ownership and identity. Whoever calls the smart contract, its identity is known, the anonymous one, basically your wallet, but that is never linked to the person holding the wallet, the real person, which can then regain its assets back if proving, with the price of revealing their true identity, they can be refunded in this sense. And there are proposals, at least already, there will be only ideas at the beginning. They are not implemented anywhere. People are still struggling and deciding about their implementation. But this is the sort of things that can save up the regular user from being exploited. Like a second mechanism that can, okay, you got robbed, you got rugged by a protocol, but that's not the end of it. You know, your funds, it's still safe because it's a second owner, decentralized owner over those resources, and that can refund you if you prove some identity and stuff like that, or others decide that that has been maliciously transferred an asset or something. Yeah, so there is work in that direction at the moment. There are still years to come to have these things implemented, and we are on the right track, I can say.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting take, explained very clearly, I hope. I also feel that we still have some work to do, but we can already see that there are some efforts being done in that direction. And as Marius's shirt says, I think this period is the one that has the most potential to bring this type of features that are required to onboard the larger audience. Marius, do you have another opinion?
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree with what Alex said. I feel like blockchain was created to actually to give more power to the people, right? Because you own your own asset, you can do whatever you want with it. The problem is that it was created to with that idea, but to actually fully get that idea implemented at a, let's say, larger public or like the whole planet, it requires a lot of work because at first some devs created these tools for devs actually, because to actually understand what a wallet is, how that wallet is created, what a smart contract is, how to look transactions, it's a bit geeky. It's not like, yeah, I can put my mother to look on the blockchain and see that she transferred me its money, right? Uh, I remember when, and I do a little bit like comparison with like I remember when like credit cards were becoming mainstream, and my mother actually got a credit card from her company, and that transition of like, wait, so I don't receive the money into my hand, I have on this piece of plastic and I need to go to a machine to give me money. And I know there's like a whole debate within her friends where like, let's go there, and yeah, I need to follow some steps. So it was kind of like um, not so easy to understand for like general public that doesn't do that. And exactly the same kind of like happens in the Web3, and especially with the security part, and people actually having a lot of like mistakes, actually doing a lot of mistakes, and we need a bit more mainstream and UX solutions to actually get more people into it. But we are progressing towards that, and we actually do very good progress on that, because we attract more and more general, let's say, companies, big companies into the space, and I'm confident that we will reach a point where we can actually get um, more into having more public adopting this technology, like, and by technology I mean like DeFi concept, and not necessarily they need to understand the blockchain, but actually the what it's built on the blockchain, the DeFi, or like, asset ownership like NFTs, or like decentralized identities, and yeah, things like that. The security will always be a risk, because you also have a risk like on the banks or whatever. The thing on the banks part is that those assets are a bit so on the back side. The good thing is that those assets are somehow a record in a database, and if like a breach happens and someone actually sees it, it's very easy to modify. It's not very easy, it's easier to modify it on the bank data table and say, yeah, oh wait, this is not 1 million that should go to this member, this client, this is 1 million that should go to this client, right? So it's easy to revert. But on the blockchain it's not that easy, because once I transfer to Alex by mistake, or Alex took 1 million from me, I cannot say, now who should I call to actually revert that? So I think more of these like things that can happen, and that can and that should be implemented, because there are use cases that sending there are like a lot of people that are sending wrong assets wrongly to an address, either that they copied it wrong, or they didn't know that that should be sent there. And there is like a talk right now, it's not yet like a official proposal, but it's still in talks, like to have a new type of like ERC20 that actually lets you reverse the transaction if it was sent by mistake to some contracts, and to know that those contracts are like real contracts. So all of these like things that can be built and can narrow down the amount of possibilities that you can screw up. It's what will slowly attract more people into. Plus the UX part, where like you have an experience with the wallet, and actually be easy to use the wallet and understand what the wallet means and what keys means. It will be something that, as Alex said, the social recovery, that you know that okay, if something happened, you can have some through a social recovery process to actually get either the funds back as you lost your keys, or like reverse some transactions in some way. It's also a fine line here between like actually helping and actually trying to scam, because I can, again, I guess, send to Alex some amount of money, and then through the social recovery process, whatever that is, to get the money back, and Alex think that okay, I send this money, Marius send this money to me, but he actually reverts. So it's a lot of, yeah, a lot of things that needs to be, that we need to think about. But we for sure we will be more and more UX friendly for the larger public to adhere to this technology and this culture.
You basically managed to cover my next question as well, because I was planning to ask about what do you think would be the key elements that we require in order to bring to make Web3 mainstream. But you already you started by enumerating by saying one interesting fact that I really like, that in order to onboard the masses, they don't have to understand that they are running on blockchain and how blockchain works. We just need better products on top of blockchain with better UX and with a possibility to revert or recover from mistakes. So basically make products more forgiving to the non-technical people, a better UX and more reliable products. So I think this is basically a conclusion that we can end this talk with. Um, in my opinion, if I may say so, I think in order to do that, we need quality across the stack. We need the blockchain to be as reliable as possible in itself, from the blockchain clients on running nodes, having a variety in the type of clients that are run, from the infrastructure providers that give developers a way to build on those blockchains that should provide the necessary level of reliability, performance, and so on. And then coming on top of this with the products and the UX that's required for people to actually want to use it. Because I don't think people all know how, most people know how cloud works, or AWS or Azure or GCP work, and they just don't care. They basically want the product to work every time they use it, and they want to be stopped from making costly mistakes. Okay, guys, so I think this is the end of the first session of the Blockchain Talks webinar. In my opinion, there were very interesting points on each side, and very helpful insight from the more technical part of the Web3 space. Thank you for taking the time, and have a productive rest of the week.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.